Y'all come in, sit down, we gotta talk. They are saying Diddy is about to go broke. Now let's talk about it, y'all. Diddy thought he dodged the big one. No SMEX trafficking conviction, no RICO convent conviction, just about 2 men at conventions, and this man thought he was just going tiptoe out the door with some bail. Now listen, Judge Aaron told him to sit down before he sits them down. But y'all, let's actually talk about how Diddy forgot one thing, the civil cases. And now Jane Doe, the escorts, and every person who's ever got flown out under pressure just got a legal cheat code, and they're coming straight for his money. Y'all, let's get into this, because all I gotta say is, baby, we love to see it. Now, first of all, I want everybody on the internet to understand what Diddy was actually convicted of and why it's a civil lawsuit, Gold Marine. All right, so let's get into it, because this part matters more than people, and the duty supporters realize. A lot of folks heard Mann Act and thought it was some dusty technical law. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it is dope. It is rooted in racism, white slavery. However, over the years, it evolved and is now the most powerful tools that prosecutors use in SMEX trafficking. All right, y'all got that. Now let's get into this. All right, so the Mann Act now is a federal MEX crime statute, and baby, it has teeth. It carries prison time up to 20 years. And if you plead guilty or you're convicted, that stays on your record for life. Now, baby, Diddy was convicted. So what exactly was Diddy convicted of? Under U.S. Code 2421, the Mann Act makes it a federal felony to knowingly transport a person across state lines for the purposes of illegal smilurial activity, whether that's prostitutes or coercive smilurial arrangements that violate state or federal DIA law. Now, let's break this down legally, because I need for people in the back to hear this. Knowingly means it wasn't accidental. You booked the flights. You arranged the hotel. You knew what was going to happen. For illegal smilurial activity, includes SMEX under coercion, fraud, drugs, manipulation, or exploitation, not just formal prostitution. And crossing state lines turns it into a federal offense, not just a local scandal. And that's exactly what federal prosecutors alleged that he did multiple times over multiple years to multiple women in the escorts. So even if the charges were sealed, okay, and even if he didn't serve time, which they are not sealed, and he is going to serve time. A conviction or guilty plea under the Mann Act means the federal government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he uses power, wealth, and transportation access to commit SMEX trials, sex crimes. Maybe let that sit in. No, literally let it. Okay, now let's see. Now here's why the conviction is a civil lawsuit jackpot. It removes the burden of proof for future plaintiffs. That's right. Jane Doe and the escorts don't need to prove that Diddy intended to exploit them across state lines. All they have to do is show up and say, Yana, here's his federal conviction. He's already been found guilty of doing this exact thing. They don't need him to be convicted of SMEX trafficking. They only need to show, by a preponderance of the evidence, that it's more likely than not that he harmed them. A Mann Act conviction is like a neon sign for the judge saying, this man has done this before. This isn't theoretical. The Mann Act makes him legally vulnerable even without jail time. Because let's be clear, Diddy may be able to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but legally, he's now a convicted SMX offender under federal law. That's admissible, that's powerful. And in a civil court, baby, that's money. The survivors don't need to prove consent was absent. They don't need to prove, oh, I didn't consent, I didn't want it. They don't have to sit up in front of those juries and listen to them watch all their horrors and being like, nah, you wanted. The law has already said it didn't matter, because under the Mann Act, consent isn't valid if the sexual activity involved fraud, manipulation, or abuse of power. So when people say, well, they agreed to go, the court has already decided. The agreement was not legally valid. You cannot legally agree to let somebody exploit you like that. Now here's the translation for the timeline and the people in the back. Diddy just didn't take a PR hit, y'all. He was legally branded as someone who exploits women using power, travel, and coercion. Even if he never wears an orange jumpsuit, and he will. Even the best estimate Mark Garagos has him as a year. His money is now on the table, and the bill is coming due. But y'all, let's also focus on the civil fallout. Okay. How this one? Well, actually, these 2 convictions opened the lawsuit floodgates. Diddy's Mann convention didn't close that chapter. It cracked the safe open because now, well, actually, yeah, now that Diddy's been formally convicted of a federal sex crime. What's that mean? Take every person who has ever been flown out, locked down, coerced, rugged, assaulted, manipulated, or just controlled by this man in a spectral context. Baby, they have legal ammo. Who are we talking about? Jane Doe, the escorts, any background dancers, industry girlfriends, paid for +1s. I'm just saying. And did he pay for their time, not their body? And the ones who were told this is how it works, get used to it. And anyone who had to play alone to survive. Now, thanks to collateral estoppel, a legal term, Diddy can't just show up in court and say, I didn't do that, because the federal government already said, yes, yes, yes. You did, in fact, do that. The Mann Act conviction means every survivor's legal team gets to skip step one. They don't have to prove if he's guilty. They get to focus on how much he owes. And baby, of course, this is about money, not prison. But again, don't let people screw you with the okie, okay? Don't let people screw you with the okie oak of, oh no, why are you doing civil? You just want money, hell yeah. Run that fool's pockets up. Because without that money, these people wouldn't be on their hands and knees begging for pennies, doing his evil work. All right, this is about money, not prison. The criminal court gave us the label. The civil court is going to send the invoice. Under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the related civil statutes, these survivors can now sue for pain and suffering, psychological trauma, emotional distress, loss of income, punitive damage, attorney's fees, and lifetime therapy costs. And those numbers add up fast. If one woman wins a $5 million judgment, that sets a precedence for the next, and the next, and the next. And this is how predators lose everything after the verdict. Diddy is now one mistake away from losing it all forever. And baby, we love to see it. And here, because you guys, I don't care. Listen, this is a point of discourse, but even a fool can see that right now. And by fools, I mean everybody, but his supporters outside can see that now that there's a federal conviction on record. Diddy can never afford another mistake. If another Jane comes forward tomorrow, if he loses his temper in a hotel suite, if a party gets filmed, if a former assistant comes clean, or if an escort feels emboldened, baby Diddy is. Because that one new lawsuit, that lawyer just walks in with the Mann Act paperwork and says, look at the pattern. He did this before. He's doing it again. The judge doesn't need a full trial. The judge doesn't need to guess. They already know who he is. And this time he can't claim innocence. He already signed that away. Baby, this is the final word on this fallout. Day 5 of the Diddy trial. Diddy trial. Verdict. Fallout, I guess. Did he thought that literally only being convicted of those 2 counts could save his empire? But what he really did was hand every survivor the legal weapon they were missing. He thought it was over. But the truth is that signature under the Mann Act just made it open season for his life. Again, I want you guys to know he pleaded guilty on 2 counts, and it's not even what he pleaded guilty for, it's what he admitted on the record. Mark Agnapilio admitted he was very violent, admitted he did all those horrible things. That's why he got denied bail. Everything he admitted in that court can be used in a civil suit. Baby, again, the Mann Act blew the door open. And get this, the feds might not be done. The Mann Act wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a wedge, a crack in the dam. And now the water is rushing in civilly, and perhaps even criminally. Let's be clear. When the federal court convicts you under the Mann Act, you don't just lose reputation, you lose protection. How? Well, how about this? First, the civil floodgates are wide open. Every woman who thought, well, I can't sue, no one would believe me, now has something powerful in their corner. A federal conviction confirming this man used SMN, ETA's power and interstate travel to exploit women. This is the legal equivalent of blood in the water, and that sharks are circling with lawsuits, lawyers, and trauma timelines. And the Trafficking Victims Protecting Act, that's a TVP, which works hand in hand with the Mann Act, gives survivors up to 10 years from the date of discovery to file civil claims for coerce, drug fuel manipulation, emotional and psychological abuse,
and no longer has a voice who will pursue justice for her accusation.
Of grooming and trafficking.
As of the taken against Diddy, no expansion of the investigation, no isolation orders, no equipment access, no suspension of attorney communication. Everything inside solitary block C continued as before. Everything except the fear. If a female warden can vanish after a single nothing except the fear. If a female warden can vanish after a single note, the ones who once worked overnight in that area, the ones who filed for leave without giving a reason, the ones who saw but never spoke. No one mentions the note, but everyone knows it appeared. And if what it says is true, then punishment. Part 3. The person no longer in the system. The internal personnel database of the Atlanta Federal Detention Center updated its weekly roster.
They hit
Under the
hard.
category
Same
Special
with
Personnel
Epstein.
Code
Same
Adjustment,
with Weinstein.
the name of
Pattern
Warden
cases
TD
take
was
time.
marked
And
as
now the
removed
Mann
from
Act
system by
conviction,
administrative
the two
order.
of them,
There was
has
no
done
decision
two
number
dangerous
recorded,
things
but
for
was
Diddy. It preserved
deactivated.
criminal
Her
liability,
personal contact
because if any
information
new
disappeared
victim
from the
steps
internal
forward
network
with a
exactly
fresh federal
36 hours
violation,
after
or
she
if any
filed her
past
complaint.
violations
The
falls
changelog
within
was
the statute of
executed from the
limitations,
system's
the
highest
feds
access
can
level
reopen
server,
an
a device
investigation
bearing the
with
identifier
and file new charges.
DCCA1,
And this time,
located
they
in
bring
the
the
coordination
pattern. They bring
office
the
on the
pattern,
4th floor
and
of
they
the
might
Security
still get the
Administration
RICO.
Wing.
Now I know what you're saying.
Only two
Double jeopardy.
individuals
They can
possess the
never try
authority
him
to
for RICO
perform a
again.
system-level
Yes,
personnel
for the
removal at that
trafficking
tier,
of
the
Cassie
head
and
of
Jane.
Federal Human
But for
Resources
anybody else,
and
still
Detention
open
Center.
season. So again, like
No
I said,
confirmation
let's just say,
exists as
did
patient
he
was
lose
made.
his temper again,
The removal
like
of
he
Warden
allegedly did with
TD's
Jane?
name was
Let's
not
say the
accompanied by
former
any
employee
or
hands over
protective
those rumored
reassignment.
videos. Let's say
At
someone flips the
11:20
driver,
a.m., a
manager,
printed
fix.
copy of the
If one more
personnel
credible
deployment
case
chart was
lands on a
generated in
prosecutor's
preparation
desk,
for the new
Diddy
week's
is not
schedule.
just writing checks,
Under the
he's
section
doing
marked
time.
Internal
Diddy is in a
Alert,
holding
TD's
pattern.
name.
Y'all, one step from collapse. Now, right now, again, this is dangerous legal limbo. The feds have enough to expose him. The civil suits are lining up to bankrupt him. One more misstep, and he is R. Kelly. 2. He doesn't even have to assault anyone new. If a case from 2016-17 surfaces and falls within the 10-year window, he could be charged under the same law he just literally got convicted of. But this time, it's going to be worse. And because he's already a convicted SMEX offender, the next jury won't be asking if, they'll be asking how many years. Baby Diddy tried to close the door with a sealed deal, but what he really did was leave it unlocked and light a fire on the way out. Civilly, he's vulnerable. Criminally, he's on probation without papers. Financially, the invoices are coming. Baby, one misstep, one more Jane, one more temper tantrum. And the government that let him slide this. I'm sorry, not the government. The jury that let him slide this time. Baby, they will swing again. And next time, they're saying they might not miss. Woo! Baby, this is some heavy stuff. What do y'all think about this? Because at the end of the day, Jane's case is just a start. Jane Doe may potentially file suit again. If she did, it would outline rugging, rape, psychological control, and exploitation across multiple states, the exact blueprint for the Mann Act charge. And because Diddy has already pled guilty to similar behavior, her legal team has momentum. But what happens when the escorts file? What happens when a second Jane Doe, if they exist, steps forward, or a third, or a fourth, or a fifth? If even one wins a multi-million-dollar verdict, the rest will follow. This isn't a gossip headline anymore. It's mass tort territory. You guys keep this in mind, okay? And I want everybody to know this, and just keep hope alive, because the universe always bends to the arc of truth. Okay, again, keep it in mind. Let's end this with a little hope and a little heat. Because if you've been watching this and thinking, where's the justice? Baby, you're not alone. Diddy is I don't think he got. I don't think justice was served yet. There's whispers of charges in California, maybe New York, maybe federal RICO, and maybe they'll file, or maybe they won't. But I'm going to tell you what I do know and what I do think. Justice doesn't always come in the form of a courtroom. Sometimes it shows up in a mirror. And Diddy is a man who survived off-control, intimidation, manipulation for over 2 decades. That's not just strategy, that's identity. And now that identity is under threat. Diddy is no longer in control. He's being watched. He's being whispered about. He's being laughed at. He's being outed in court records. Sealed deals, in public opinion. And a man like Diddy, baby, he doesn't collapse quietly. And lastly, that brings us to the real danger. Diddy's own nature. See, the most dangerous thing about Diddy isn't what's been proven. It's what he still believes he can get away with. And that's why, whether or not charges are ever filed again, he's going to make a mistake. Because Diddy can't help. But Diddy, he can't stand being humiliated. He can't sit still. He can't stop asserting power, even when the world is saying stop. So, when you ask where justice is, it might not be in a jury verdict. It might not come from the FBI, and it might not come from California or New York. It might come from Diddy's own hand. From the one bad night, where he can't contain himself. From the next Jane he underestimates. From the next phone he gets to destroy. From a fixer who's had enough. Or from the escorts that have jet lag, and they're mad he flew them out on Southwest Spirit Airlines. Baby, a reckoning is coming, and it's bigger than the courtroom. This is bigger than one trial. This is about power. This is about silence. This is about what happens when you spend 20 years playing God and thinking the world won't bite you back. So, for every survivor, every viewer, every person who felt like they were losing hope, don't, because justice isn't always loud, but it is patient, and it doesn't need a press release to. Sometimes, the biggest fall comes not when the system stops you, but when your own ego drives you into the fire, and baby, Diddy is already holding that match. Anyway, y'all let me know what you think in the comments. I will talk to y'all later.